This is the black magic experiment. Now don't be fooled by the title. We're going to be using black ink and black food colouring, assuming you can get both those things, and we're going to investigate something rather interesting about those two colours. So already you know you're going to need ink and food colouring. Try and get both if you can. You're also going to need 2 cups. Now as you can see, I'm using see-through cups, transparent plastic cups. That's because I want you to be able to see what's going on inside through the cup itself. But you don't need to. You can use ordinary cups from the cupboard. Glasses are okay as well, but of course be sensible if you're using glasses. So you've got your 2 cups. I have some ink here and some food colouring there. And you're going to see, as you can see, I've got little brushes here because I'm going to be using the brushes to apply the ink. I've got some water and I'm going to pour some water into the cups, okay? Now you don't need very much at all, just a tiny bit in the bottom actually. A small amount of water in both cases. And you try and keep the amount of water the same. All scientists would often measure exactly, but I'm doing it by eye. But that's okay. I'm going to move those out of the way just for the moment. You also need some blotting paper. Now blotting paper is actually what we used to do in the olden days when we write with fountain pens. Sometimes the ink came out and it was a bit too wet and you put blotting paper on it to dry the ink off. Gently push it on where you've written, peel the paper back and it will dry the ink out for you. But you can still buy it, and if you go to a stationer's or an art shop you can often get it without any problem at all. And in fact, as you can see, I've got a big sheet of it here. And then you can also see I've cut some strips. So this is what we're going to be using. I'm only going to be using 2 strips actually for this experiment. So this is what I want you to do. We have our cup here, remember, and the first one I'm going to use is the black ink. Very simple experiment to do. All you do, very carefully, get some ink on your paintbrush and draw a line. Doesn't have to be perfect, just a line with your ink. Okay, now it's not very much, so I'm going to put a bit more on. And I think I'll do it one more time. So a nice dark line. Okay. And then what I want you to do is to dip that piece of paper into the water. You don't put the ink below the surface, you have the line just above the surface actually. Doesn't matter if you do, but it's better if it stays above. And fold the paper over and leave it there for a few minutes. Now I'm going to move this out of my way just for a second. I'm going to place it about there and we'll just leave that. Now we're going to do the same thing, but this time with the food colouring. So another strip of paper. Here's my food colouring. Now I should mention that whatever pigment you use, it has to be something that can wash off in water. Now food colouring, of course, is used in food. That's why it's called food colouring. And food colouring does wash off in water. Of course, you put it in your food and it mixes with the food. So that's okay. Some black ink doesn't wash very well. Usually it's called permanent ink. So when you buy your ink or ask somebody for some ink, make sure the ink you use is washable ink. So it can wash off in water, okay? That's really important for this experiment. And we're going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to gently rest it in, dip the end in the water, bend the piece of paper just over the top, keep it in place, and we're going to leave that for a few minutes as well. Okay. So, if you've done what I asked you to do, have a look carefully and you'll see that only after 2 or 3 minutes what's happened. With the ink, we can see colours appearing. as the water travels up through the blotting paper and colours travel up with it. And if you look really carefully, you should be able to see 3 different colours emerging. The same with the food colouring. Only after a few minutes, it hasn't separated out quite as much, but I think you'll agree that the colours are appearing. And this is just only after 2 or 3 minutes. But if we leave it longer, the colours will actually separate out even more. So, what have we noticed? You would have noticed 3 colours. If you look really carefully, after a little bit of time, a few minutes, you should see 3 colours appearing from the black. Now what we're looking for is yellow, cyan, which is a bluey green colour, and magenta, which looks a bit like pink. So yellow, cyan and magenta. Now these are the 3 primary colours which we use to mix pigments with. Lots of people think primary colours are actually yellow, blue and red, but they're not. Yellow is one, certainly, but cyan and magenta are actually the other 2, not blue and red. There's a bit of a confusion there, but that's what they actually are. And we can prove it with this experiment because they use those 3 primary colours to make black, and that's actually how you make black. You mix the primary colours together. But why do they appear in this experiment is the question. Well, what we've done is an experiment using a type of science called chromatography. Now, chromatography is a long word and it's made from 2 parts. Chroma, which means colour, and graphy, which means to draw or write. So chromatography. Now, what's happening is the pigments they've used to make that black ink, which we already know is yellow, cyan and magenta, the particles of yellow, cyan and magenta are all different sizes. The little molecules, the particles they're made of are different sizes. And as the water travels up through the paper, it, what we call wicks up by capillary action, the water molecules travel up through. As they go up through the black line that you painted on there, they dissolve the ink particles, the 3 different colours, they dissolve them. So the water acts as what we call a solvent. It dissolves the particles and carries them with it as it travels up through the paper. But the different colours have different size particles. And how far the colours travel depends on the size of those particles and how those little particles react with the water and the paper itself that they're travelling through. And because we've got 3 different colours, they react in 3 different ways, and so we see 3 colours moving in different ways. And normally after about 10 minutes, the colours have separated out as much as they're probably going to for the piece of paper you're using. Okay, so what other things could you change and to see what's going to happen? Well, there's quite a few things actually. Remember, I was using blotting paper, and I find blotting paper works really well. But other things that can work really well are some types of tissue paper or kitchen towel or napkin. That's what these strips are cut from. You can use pieces of filter paper like this, which you can buy as little discs. Easier to get hold of actually would be coffee filter paper that you can buy from a shop. And they come in different colours. This, as you can see, is this pale brown colour, but they do come in white as well, and you can try those. And you will definitely get a different effect in the way the water travels through the paper and so the way the colours separate out. What about other inks? How about trying using a black pen? Now, you might think, well, hang on a minute, Dr. Mark, black pens are going to have black ink in, and we've just done ink. That's true, but they're probably going to have a different type of black ink. But remember, we want a pen which has got, this one's actually got written on it, non-permanent. And somewhere on there it also says washable, water-soluble. So we know it's okay. So remember, always use ink that you can wash in water. So that is a black pen, and you could just draw a black line on the strip as I did with the ink and the brushes. You can also try something, instead of using cups, you could take a saucer and pour some of your water into the saucer and just get a piece of whatever paper you're using and lay it in the water, making sure the end goes in the water, and leave that for a few minutes to see what happens. What I'm thinking here is, because the paper is laying that way, will the pattern be different in the way the colours go compared to when the paper was sticking up out of the cup? Because that's interesting, isn't it? it's going nearly flat compared to straight up. Will it be different? So that's another thing you could try, but I'm sure you could think of some other things too.